Alright, so back in the laundry room again. Closed out the first video with demo. So this one, sorry, my nose is bothering me from all the dust that I stirred up in here, is patching the walls. So quite a few holes to patch from all the nail holes, right? And some old stuff down here. Big empty nail holes going all the way through the drywall. So if I was just to use the joint compound, again, and I'm using Drydex lightweight low dust joint compound. Get it pretty much anywhere. Don't get the spackling. Spackling's for like filling tiny little nail holes, like pinholes, because it shrinks quite a lot. It's harder to work with and spread. I've just not had good luck with spackling. Always get the joint compound stuff. It's better for this kind of work. But my other little trick is I use caulking. So I just have some acrylic latex silicone caulk. It's paintable. And the trick for that is when you have a nail or a screw hole through the wall, right? If you just spread the joint compound over, as it dries, that void and that temperature change into the wall, it's gonna suck. Basically, it's gonna double and triple your work time to get it filled in nicely. So I'm gonna go into all these holes and actually silicone first. I can probably do this one right here. It's a pretty big one. So I'm just gonna go into it, pump a little silicone in it. Not all the way out flush, just enough to fill it so that there's actually no, and then my joint compound is gonna go over top of that. I'm just filling the hole, all right? I have just enough caulk in to fill the hole to the other side of the drywall. Not to completely fill up the divot, right? I'm not patching the hole with the caulk. The caulk is just going in there to fill the hole, right? And then any excess I got out, I'm gonna take a wet paper towel. Let's see how I got excess outside. I don't wanna let that dry on the wall. It's gonna make my texture look funny when I put the joint compound over. So I'm just gonna go around all the holes I filled real quick. And my paper towel's falling apart, but you can use a rag too. This one was bad. So I'm gonna wipe all of them up. Give the caulking, 20-30 minutes to set up. And then once that's done, we can start with the joint compound. Here's an old nail hole that was patched. And you can see how they didn't feather in the texture. Right, you can clearly see where the compound was. So they just put it in there and spread it. Didn't blend it, and I can feel it's raised. So I'll have to sand this down just a tad and then texture it when I texture the rest. And we'll go ahead and completely hide that. So that's right above the electrical box here. And there's actually some old patchwork where it looks like they attempted to texture, but it's still rough. Like if you build this out too much and use your knife, it'll never fully blend in with the ridges of the texture, because right, the knife's just gonna skip along the high spots and then none of the low spots fill properly. So what I'm gonna show you, the technique I'm gonna use when I do it in a little bit, is just, I'm gonna smooth it out into all the grooves with my fingers after the initial application with this. That'll make texturing and smoothing in so much easier. I've had this Drydex joint compound for a while, so I actually added a little water and mixed it up a little bit. Might have to do that occasionally. Like I've had this one tub for probably over a year. But I got a little bit on the spatula, putty knife, whatever you want to call it, and I'll just go ahead and do a spot and show you my technique. So gonna try to fill it in. Alright, remove all the excess after I have it filled in. So there you go. But I'm not going to let that dry like that. So like I was saying, everything outside, because of this texture, I'm gonna rub with my finger. Not over top directly where it is, because I don't want to, it'll pull material out if I do that. But everywhere on the outside. Well, see, I got my finger in there a little bit. Pulled some material out, so let me fix that real quick. Which, a little trickier to do holding a camera with one hand, but it is what it is. And that's what I'm left with. So I've just used my finger to blend into the lines, and when I was doing it right, so it's different angles of the patterns, I just tried to mimic the pattern near it, right? So it's still pink. Typically can take a while to dry. Once it's white, it says it's dry and it's ready to go again. I just play it, you know, based on the temperature and conditions. It could take longer or shorter. So I'll keep an eye on it and wait till it's dry, and then do a second coat. All right, so I ended up having to let the Drydex joint compound dry overnight. Probably because this is an exterior wall. Sometimes takes longer to dry. It can dry in an hour or two. It can be longer, so I just let it dry overnight. But you can kind of see. So see how as it did dry, there's a little bit of shrinkage, like divoting in the middle. And again, had I not put the caulking behind it, it would have actually sucked all the way through, and I could have still seen completely through the drywall. So this is actually not bad for one application of the joint compound. I'll just go back and do the second one. I think 2 is all I'm going to need. And after 2, then we'll get into texturing and blending. The second coat of compound is done. I'm really happy with it. Second coat dried much quicker. Only about an hour or 2. So I'm going to start texturing, and looking at the texture on the wall closer, I believe it was like a plaster finish, but not only is it swirled, it has it's rough, like particles in it. So I think what I'm going to do to recreate this properly is I'm actually going to take my joint compound, put a little water, soften it up so it's easy to spread, and I'm going to add a little bit of sand to it so I get this same bumpy texture. Alright, so if you're following my backyard makeover video, you know I have an old playground and slide thing here I need to remove, but I noticed there are bags of clay sand out here, which is kind of a fine sand, which should be perfect to get the texture I want. So I'm literally just going to take some and sprinkle it into my joint compound. Not a lot, just enough to give my compound some texture. And then I'll add a little bit of water and mix this up. I think that'll be good. I didn't add too much. It's probably like 1/8 of the way full, and I'm going to probably use all this to do texturing. Joint compounds mixed up for the texturing. I added that sand and the water and mixed it up, and if I look at it, right, it's not liquidy enough where it's going to drip, because I don't want it running down the walls. But you can see the occasional piece of sand causing some grittiness, and I can just compare the grittiness on the wall, the spacing of the little pieces of grit, to this. The amount of sand I added looks like I got a really good match. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, for this, you can use a sponge. I've used sponge before in the past for this kind of texture. This texture is finer, so I'm actually just going to use this old paintbrush. Well, like really old. Had this paintbrush for a long time. More use it for dusting and stuff, but yeah, we're gonna give it a shot. Let's grab a little bit on there and see what we get. Just start with one of the spots here. Throw it on, and then I'm gonna brush, follow the existing patterns, and I'm gonna go past where my patch is. And then as I'm blending it out towards the end, I'll put a little quick heavier pressure. And it might take a couple shots of this to get it fully blended, but I'm pretty happy with that. It looks like I got a little texture. I got a similar streak to the old stuff. So the paintbrush and sand and the joint compound should work really well. I've honestly never done that before. Just looking at the texture, it felt like it needed something and I just kind of winged it. So yeah, I'll do a little time lapse and texture all this up, and then we'll go back and take a look at what it looks like. So this is actually working great. I'll give you another close-up on this wall. So here's a spot. Lay it on. Just mimicking the texture. All right, so texturing is done. I was gonna do 2 coats of texture, but I think I can get away with 1, so I moved on to my next step. Before we get into that, I'll give you a close-up of the texturing over the patches. So here's a couple right here. Right, next crucial thing, right? You never know if you're gonna be able to see that. Don't be like me in the past. I've done a patch, worked hard on it, multiple coats, sanded it. It was like an orange peel texture. I recreated the orange peel texture, looked great. And then I went to paint it. And then when I was done, the whole area I textured, I could see, and I could see the patch through the paint. Even if you use a paint and primer, which I always do. I usually use Home Depot just because I like it. So Behr products, I always get their paint and primer in one for interior stuff. But joint compound, fresh dried joint compound will just have a different look through your paint compared to the old drywall and texture. So trust me, you need to prime. All right, a stain blocking primer. What I like for patching, kills. This stuff is amazing. Amazing. So interior primer blocks heavy stains and odors. Get it at the hardware store. It's about empty. I've been using it. So I've actually applied it. So this does 2 things for you. One, it's going to block the discoloration of the patch of the fresh joint compound. So anywhere there's fresh patching and texture, stain blocking primer before you use your paint and primer. Trust me, always do it. Second part it does, it shows you what it's going to look like when your painting is done if your patch was successfully blended, right? So you can still see these ones. I sprayed a little kills on this one. I'm having a tough time finding my patch. I think it was somewhere in here, one of these spots. Hard to say, right? So I'm pretty happy with that. Now, if it does come through the primer, once the kills is dry, this stuff dries in an hour, just do another joint compound texture right over this primer, and then rinse and repeat. Prime over it again and double check your work. So these ones look a little iffy. They were hard to texture because I had like 3 different swirl patterns meeting in one spot. I'm gonna hit them up with paint real quick. I'm gonna bring my camera away. I don't want to get overspray on it. All right. Give that a second to dry. So I already used the kills on all the patches I did on this wall. Even the places I blended new joint compound, I sprayed over too to check my work. And I'm super happy with it. Within the texture, I don't see any of the small patches I did coming through any of the spots. I can't see it by my eye. I don't know if you can pick anything up on the camera. So this is above the electrical panel. Remember we had the old spot that was patched horribly and you could easily see earlier in the video. So I sanded that down and I textured over that as well. And then I've got the Kills primer over it. And that is way better blended. So I'm really happy with this. So I think this wall's gonna be good. I might have to touch up some texture in a couple spots. I'm not, you know, if I'm happy with the wall I see every day, I'm not worried about all the stuff I patched back in here. I just did one coat of texture. I'm gonna be fine with that. So I'll go ahead and use the Kills. And again, I probably wouldn't use the Kills because I had so many patches. Again, the spray paint is great if you're just doing a couple patches or your patches are really far apart. Because these are a bunch of patches really close, I would just get my bonding primer in the gallon bucket and a paintbrush or a roller and just prime the whole area. But again, if you're just patching a couple holes, you know, spot primer with the Kills spray paint, that's my go-to. Works great. All right, we'll let all this dry, finish priming with the Kills, and we'll do a final look and wrap this video up. Another half hour's passed by. The Kills primer is dry. Calling this a success, calling it done. I can't see any of mine patching through the texture and primer. Like I said, I only know where to look because of the fresh white primer. But by eye, I don't know if anything's popping up on the camera, but I can't see anything from up close by eye. So I'm happy with it. So yeah, so closing out this video, this one's done. Yeah, patching is done. Be sure to subscribe and follow along if you want to see the final paint go on and the final product, and follow this whole laundry room refresh. So thanks for watching.